Damn, someone needs a dentist. I really didn't get on with this book. This book for me was probably the first real stumbling block I've had with the EDA range. Yeah, sure, I've read books that I wasn't too keen on, but they always had bits that kept me wanting to read more and find out what happens next. Longest Day, or Longest Book as I like to call it, really didn't have much going for it, and it was such a struggle to get through due to the uninteresting plotline, unforgivably awful aliens, and it being crammed full of padding. The frustrating part is I see where the author was going. Longest Day is a real tone shift from the other books in the series. It's gritty from end to end, the plot is dark and brutal, and it has some really hardcore sci-fi time elements that are intriguing. It also starts the Lost Sam story arc, which is the first proper arc of the 8th Doctor adventure books. So, despite what the front cover says, this book was actually written by Stephen Cole, who wrote this book and The Taint under the pseudonym Michael Collier. After Cole heard that the BBC had taken back the rights to produce Doctor Who books, and being a massive fan of the show, he applied for the job of project editor of sci-fi titles and was successful. Unfortunately, however, he found that he was unable to write the books themselves and was forced to change the writing name to Michael Collier so he could do it. Longest Day was Cole's first ever book of Doctor Who, and as much as I'm a massive fan of his later work, you can tell this was his first stab at the show. So the book starts off when the Doctor and Sam find a planet called Hirath that's having some very bad temporal issues. Hirath is divided into many different sections, and each section of time is running differently. They land on a base on the moon of the planet and realise that this moon base is actually controlling some of the disturbances below on the planet. Sam and the Doctor split up, and Sam finds herself in an altercation with a psychopath and ends up getting teleported down to Hirath, whilst the Doctor discovers that the moon base is currently occupied by humans but was not actually designed by them. He then notices on a scanner a ship coming towards the moon base, and creatures called Cusks start to take over the base. The Doctor figures out over the course of the book that the Cusks are looking to retrieve a time experiment. Now, the reason they're experimenting with time is so they can travel back in time to destroy aliens that tried to wipe out their species and left the Cusks in a very vulnerable state, but they haven't perfected this just yet. Meanwhile, Sam is trapped on Hirath trying to survive a battle between rebel prisoners and the evil empire that put them on the planet in exile. The Doctor and Sam almost reunite at the end of the book as the Doctor destroys the Cusks, but Sam is knocked out and a friend she made on the planet sent her away on a Cusk ship so she can escape the Cusk. The book ends with the Doctor left on the moon base, all by himself. Okay, so I want to start off by saying this book has some very good concepts. The idea of Hirath being this heavily time-distorted world was so interesting, and the opening of the book really got me excited. Then time crashes through like a roaring wave of pale water over the far spindly trees, aging them and pushing them new saplings in the blink of an eye. "Run!" he says, but it's instinct, not practical suggestion. Tarn runs the wrong way, spins round as the crackling waves break on him. Vost is caught on a narrow strip that's safe, an eye in the storm. Vost watches him die for hours. The eyes staring back into his own were dry and wrinkled. Gradually they atrophied until there was only a steady stream of dust pouring from the empty sockets. That alone must have taken a good half hour. Flakes of skin broke away from the face like tiny petals and fluttered gently to the parched earth below. He counted them as they fell in silence. There were lots of crazy concepts for this strange world, and I felt this was one of the book's best elements. I do feel, however, the book drags out plot points that simply didn't need to be dragged out. Longest Day heavily focuses on Sam when she's on Hirath and how she's caught up in this seemingly irrelevant spat between rebel prisoners and the Empire. I hope to God this is brought up in future books, as I feel like I've devoted a lot of my time understanding the squabbles that are going on in this time period. This is definitely the part of the book that feels most drawn out, and I genuinely struggle to get through some of these parts, unfortunately. I did mention earlier briefly how grim this book is, containing scenes of torture, soldiers brutalising prisoners, and people being tormented for years on end due to time disturbances. Have a look at this. Look, the Doctor was grimly marvelling at yet another display of Time's elegant torturing of this region. Anstar had already passed through enough sights to haunt her for the rest of her life, but apparently the Doctor seemed to feel her scientific curiosity should be re-aroused by every fresh horror. She'd already stared at 2 patients attacking each other again and again as if preserved forever on a looping holovid, watching the same pained expressions on their faces reappear every few seconds. She'd seen a young boy whose arms had withered away to little more than ancient bones, his face frozen in a mask of terror. There'd been another officer walking along in slow motion on patrol. They tried to talk to her, but the doctor had decided she was caught in a bubble of time drifting backward. She couldn't answer them because she was moving back through her own past, and so the present had no meaning. Now a patch of odd-looking plants were growing, well, backward and forward, shrinking into the earth, then bursting back out into pale yellow flower. Tendril-like vines beginning to be sucked into the soil, then spat violently back out. Anstar sighed. Life in a loop. Are we going the same way if we keep going? The doctor smiled half-heartedly at her. Brings a whole new meaning to watch what you step in. Stay close to me, I'm a Time Lord. If I'm honest, the characters I feel were lacking for the most part. I genuinely can't remember a single character from this book, as most of them felt really bland and one-dimensional. This is probably also due to them all blurring into one, as they seem to have these ridiculous sci-fi names that I simply couldn't keep track of. Sam was slightly less annoying in this book though, which is definitely a plus, and I can't help but feel really sorry for her as she goes through some pretty traumatic experiences, so I was happy with how Sam was written. The Doctor was also great, and I like what Cole was doing with the character, showing just how detached the Doctor can be from horrific events, making a light-hearted version of the character feel almost cold, but keeping that upbeat vibe the 8th Doctor is known for. In short, the main characters were fine, but everyone else was pretty much a write-off. I do, however, really like the direction the authors are taking with the EDA range at this point. Longest Day is honestly a really brutal book and doesn't hold back any punches when describing just how awful it is to live on this planet. This book is certainly not for the faint of heart, and I honestly can't stress enough how deeply depressing it is to read this book. I genuinely can't think of a positive narrative thing that happens in Longest Day, but due to this it can make the book feel void of an emotional connection with the reader, and it makes it a struggle to pick up again after you've had a hard day of work when all you want to do is crash out and read. So the time trees also make a little appearance as well. Yeah, you remember that weird tree from Genocide that kinda didn't really do anything? Well, Hirath is where they come from. It's nice to see the book referencing other books in the series, however briefly. I will say at this point, this is something you'll need to pay attention to if you want to read these books as a series. I shall say no more. Now, this wouldn't be a proper review if I didn't address the massive issue of the Cusks. I really hated these villains. They were so one-dimensional and written so poorly. I didn't buy into their plan at all, and they felt like they were generally dull and uninteresting, which is a shame, as I genuinely think they could have been a lot more threatening had they been written with a lot more care and attention. One of the most threatening things they did in the book was destroy the Doctor's purple beetle. But we don't talk about the Doctor's purple beetle. Overall, I wasn't thrilled by this one, if you hadn't gathered from the review. I really don't have an awful lot else to say about this book other than I would recommend skipping this one if you were considering reading it. It felt so long and hard to persist with, which is such a shame as I can completely see where Cole was going with it. This easily has to be the worst EDA book I have read in the series so far, and I can only give this one a 2 out of 10. Inexperienced writing, mixed with very drawn out plot points, made this book torture to get through. Okay, so that's the end of today's review. I hope you all enjoyed my review today. If you did like the video, please comment down below your thoughts on the book or the thoughts on the video. I love to have a chat with you guys in the comments, so please comment down below. Also, I've got some exciting reviews coming up. I've obviously just set up my new series, Adventures series of reviews, so go check that one out, link in the description. I'm going to be uploading to that as well. And I've also got an exciting book that I'm really excited to read, written by the one and only Tom Baker. If you can guess which one it is, then props to you. So I'm going to be reviewing that at some point as well. So, yep, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.